Greetings, this is Top Hat and Buttered Popcorn. My name is John Savers. I'm your host, and today we'll consider a couple of films, beginning with Underworld 2003. Now, I will say as a preliminary comment that since I have become a Netflicker, I will be including reviews of DVDs that are available at Netflix and other such services. This is one that I took a look at, and I rather enjoyed it. This being so, this particular story does not deal so much with humans except in the sense of passing. Humans are kind of like cattle in the way that the cowboys and Indians are sort of fighting around and through. The only curiosity is that in this particular film, the cowboys and Indians are werewolves and vampires. And it's possible for either to turn a piece of a steer or cattle into a werewolf or a vampire. So with that understood, the framework is strictly vampire, lycan, or werewolf. Lycan being the sort of gentrified term for werewolf. The film kind of opens with a sketchy-looking animated sort of a presentation with a narration by the film's star, Kate Beckinsale, as Selene. She explains that there has been a long-standing conflict between the lycans and the vampires. Of course, from her understanding, the lycans started it, and the vampires are going to end it. In fact, her foster father, Viktor, who is an elder vampire who is sleeping at this point in time, or as the lycan leader, Lucian, puts it, hibernating. At any rate, he had turned her from a human into a vampire, and a very powerful one at that, to help her avenge the murder of her family, ostensibly by werewolves, lycans. The plot thickens on that particular issue later. The Selene character discusses the history and gives a nice setup, I think, to bring everybody to speed. And then the film kind of departs from this animated, sketchy look and to reality, so to speak. We see Selene. She is almost always in fairly tight, black, glossy material, not entirely alien to, let's say, Batman. She seems to have some kind of cape-like deal also, but there's no problem for these vampires to leap several stories and hit the ground with a soft landing and start striding forth. And that's the case in this beginning. Selene, looks over to a compatriot, Rigel, or Rigel, R-I-G-E-L. They give each other knowing looks. They're separated by maybe 50 feet, each one perched in his own tower in a sort of a Gothic-looking milieu. I never understood exactly where this thing was taking place. It's very embarrassing, but most of the vampires talked like British citizens of some stature or other. There is some elements of it that recall America, such as some of the ways of the police, the fake police, how they're dressed. And there's also allusions to Hungary, which in the thing was filmed in Hungary, I believe. There is a subway that carries the sign South Terminus, and there is a separate clan or coven of vampires who are coming to visit the one at which Selene is housed at this point in time, and the elder of that particular coven is named Amelia. She's an elder, and she sends an envoy who talks about the two great covens being separated by an ocean. I thought, well, what ocean? First of all, Amelia and her group I thought were sort of Italian in style and appearance, possibly Romanian. So are they talking about the Mediterranean Sea as an ocean, or what are they talking about? Are these people, these vampires in America someplace, Boston? Are they talking about the English Channel? What are they talking about? Ocean? I don't know. I have to say it's a curiosity. I'd invite anyone to go there and take a look at that film and figure out exactly where these two people, these two covens are. But be that as it may, the coven at which Selene is housed shares a locale with the lycans, who are resurgent, shall we say. Parenthetically, part of the whole movie idea at the outset was that the most feared and dangerous of all the lycan leaders, Lucian, was dead. And he had been killed by a very unlikely vampire named Craven. But again, as the story progresses, we do learn that this is a ruse. At any rate, Selene and Regal march off toward a subway. They are kind of spotting a couple of known lycans, or suspected lycans anyway, strongly suspected, because of the experience of the vampires in this particular matter. Now, it should be said that Selene and Regal are not just any kind of vampire. They're not these kind of layabout vampires kind of waiting around until somebody hands them a victim to drain. They are called death dealers, and they go out and actively hunt not humans but werewolves, lycans, to put the quietus on them, to get rid of these mangy beasts once and for all. Let's say the vampires are a little bit elitist. I think it's fair to say. They lounge about Viktor's house in his great room, pretty much like a bunch of corrupt people, and they don't seem to have too much to do except gossip and kind of eye the death dealers as they go back and forth, which they seem to do quite a lot. And heading both sides of it, the whole house, the elder pro tempore, so to speak, is Craven. Now, Craven has gotten his position because of his alleged murder of Lucian. He's the only witness of it. And he brought back the skin of Lucian in the shoulder area that bore the unique brand emblem of Lucian. It was very curious to look at because when you first look at it, it looks very much like a V, something that Viktor might have worn, or vampire or something, you know. But it was characteristic of the werewolf, the lycan Lucian. Go figure. At any rate, a closer inspection would probably detail that it was not a V, but some other kind of symbol. But from a distance, it certainly appeared to be a V, and very curious. This was brought forth by Corvin along with the story that he had killed Lucian. This was credited by Viktor, who was not sleeping at that time. And when he decided to take the big sleep, not death, but the big sleep, he appointed Corvin to head the house until he was awakened. Now, it might be said in parting that when these people sleep, these elders, they're kind of put down into what appears to be a manhole with an ornate metallic top, which if you fool around with the top, it has kind of like gears and stuff like this, which if put in a certain position automatically lift up and produce the vertical casket, so to speak, housing the sleeping elder. It's quite something. Now, in this house, there are two sleeping elders, Viktor and Marcus. And both are asleep, supposed to be, and are at the outset. And the only elder vampire awake is Amelia, off in the other coven. Corvin, in this particular film, who is played by Sheen Brolly, is a person who puts forth the image of command without the steel behind it. Selene sort of dismisses him out of hand as a bureaucrat, not a warrior, and she treats him with considerable disrespect. There is another vampire lass in this particular film we see a lot, named Erica, played by Sophia Myles, who is something of a climber and who treats Corvin in a worshipful sort of way, and has a kind of a competitive instinct toward Selene because Corvin has an eye for Selene. One of the reasons he may have an eye for Selene is that Selene is a warrior. She is a tough cookie, and his bluff and her reality might make for a ruling duo that would have some staying power. So with this background, we catch up again with Selene and Regal going to the subway. It just so happens that amongst the lycans is Reyes. Reyes is a rather hefty fellow. He's played by Kevin Griveau, who also is a writer of this particular Underworld film. And he's kind of the right-hand werewolf of Lucian. And he is following the Scott Speedman character named Michael Corvin, who is a medical doctor doing internship somewhere. Michael has gotten a few hours off from his work as a doctor at the hospital. He's going to go back to his pad and crash for a little bit. So that's why he's headed for the subway. Reyes and the other werewolves are after him because they want to Shanghai him, take him back to the lycan stronghold where there's a laboratory run by a fellow named Singhi, played by Edwin Leader, who is a striking and amusing character, and was one of the pleasant surprises about this film. It reminds me a little bit of Jack Elam. And who would have supposed that werewolves would have something akin to a doctor or a scientist? At any rate, he is working that angle for them, and the reason that it's being done is that Lucian has an idea of blending the bloodlines of the werewolves and the vampires and to cause a peace to prevail by a combining of the houses, so to speak. All efforts to do so at this point in time have been futile, as the two bloodlines seem to fight even at the molecular level. But they do have a legend, and it goes back to one Corvinus, Alexander Corvinus, and he was a warlord in Hungary, and he has some sort of inexplicable genetic makeup. His internal defense systems, his immune systems to disease and so forth were remarkable. He lived about the 5th century BC, AD rather, and a plague had hit his town, and he was the only one to survive this plague because his body could take the virus and change it into something other and useful. Now, exactly how this played into the issue of vampires and werewolves is not clear at all. The only implication is that because of this extraordinary quality in the genetics of Alexander Corvinus, this extraordinary quality was passed along to descendants. Now, according to the legend, Alexander Corvinus had 2 sons at least. And in a colloquy between Nighy and Viktor, we learn a little bit of the legend of one son of Alexander Corvinus being bitten by a bat and the other by a wolf. And then Viktor finishes up the legend by saying, and a third who was doomed to walk in the road of mortality as a human. Now, it just so happens that this strange genetic power that Alexander Corvinus had exists only in the humans as a dormant element. Well, it does make for the story, so don't resist. At any rate, Lucian is on to this. And Viktor, the whole idea of joining or combining or blending werewolves and vampires is just an abomination, repellent to him. Certainly, they don't seem to have too much in the way of scientific work going on in the vampire kingdom, except for this. We do know that they have some sort of corporate industrial arm because they're making clone blood and things like this to sell to humans. And this is keeping them in their house and lounging around and stuff like that. So they do have enterprises going, and to be making clone blood and stuff like this, you would think you would have to have some scientists, presumably some of whom are vampires, but this is not really gone into in this particular story. Therefore, most of the science seems to reside on the lycan side. Lucian apparently has the ulterior motive of becoming the king, so to speak, of both groups. He intends to turn himself into part vampire, part lycan, but as the legend goes, stronger than either. He would look to be an invincible force. At this point in time, the sleeping Viktor is thought to be the oldest and strongest of the vampires. It's not quite clear exactly where he came from or how he came about and so forth, or the rest of it for that matter. When he comes out of his rest, he looks very much like a pharaoh to me. Selene was the one who had brought him up prematurely because of her fears in regard to the existence of Lucian and the possible connivance of Craven, and therefore the threat to the Coven and to Viktor. She tried to impart this to him, but her ineptitude as an official awakener produced a kind of a clutter in his mind. He had shards, as it were, of what's going down. But when he does come out, he looks very much, as you might imagine, a pharaoh who just came up out of the 3,000-year rap. But at any rate, the struggle which we had spoken of at the outset of this review began with Selene and Regal and the vampires that they were following having a big shootout in the subway. Skipping ahead now, the story progresses into a final shootout, as it were. Viktor, of course, has been awakened. He has been apprised that Amelia has been ambushed and killed. He knows that he has been awakened prematurely, that it's not his time, it's Marcus's time. But now, in this emergency situation, he has to step forward and be the elder that they all expect. And he goes forth to put the quietus on Lucian and those dadgum lycans once and for all, and also on this Michael Corvin that they detest because, first of all, he's a human. Second of all, he's been bitten by Lucian and is on the way to becoming a lycan. Third, he has corrupted Selene with a romantic element, a Cupid-like piercing of her heart that makes her a little bit unreliable. Well, it just really becomes tangled. But in the end, we do see Michael Corvinus, Selene, and Viktor in a settling of the matter, so to speak. Viktor, to my surprise, is able to overcome, it appears, this Michael Corvinus, who is stronger than werewolf, stronger than vampire. But in point of fact, he doesn't really seem to be that strong. It is Selene, using Viktor's own sword, who puts the quietus on Viktor. And then there is this final strange ending in which she seems to be tentative toward him as in the presence of a new god king. There are a couple of lycans that show up at the end, and they see him and seem to pull back in respect. So we see the potential of a unifying force here in this new hybrid, part werewolf, part vampire entity. And yet, there is this. When Selene had brought the scientist lycan, Nighy, to spill the beans before Viktor, Viktor kills him, and his blood pours into Marcus's tomb, manhole, so to speak, and the blood gets in his mouth, and we see an awakening. We see the typical vampire eyes, which are blue, suddenly flash into the all black of the hybrid. So we don't know what to make of this. This seems ominous. Do we now have Marcus, who is going to be this this new hybrid king? Or what's going to be the situation with Michael Corvin, who also is in this? It's hard to say. And then there is this final kind of epilogue in which the narration of Selene is that the violence done against the Covins would be retaliated against. There would be years and years of blood and gore, and that she herself, because of her helping Michael Corvin and her participation in the killing of the elder Viktor, would herself become hunted. Well, that's it, folks. A wrap. We're out of time. Again, this is Top Hat and Buttered Popcorn. My name is John Savers. I'm your host. I do appreciate your tuning in and hope to see you again at our next Top Hat and Buttered Popcorn.